right, should we get started?
We should. We got screen sharing. We're doing good.
Yes, screen
All
share looks
right.
good.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We're so excited to talk. This is one of our kind of favorite topics. Just a really fun time all around. We're excited to share practical tips and some of the things that we've learned and kind of digging into employee influencers kind of over the last couple of years now. So really happy to kind of be here today. Myself, I am Jamie. I'm the VP of Marketing at Workshop. Kelsey is here with me today. You will probably have met her on a whole bunch of these as well. She's our marketing strategist. And then our good friend John will be here in the chat answering some questions and helping us with Q&A at the end. As Kelsey
Hello.
said, feel free to drop in your questions in the chat. We will also be sending that follow-up email with everyone, for everyone, with the link to the webinar, with the chat transcript. So share those ideas as we go. I know everyone loves having that resource at the end. We'll share some links to resources as we cover them, and then make sure we tackle any of your unanswered questions as well. So let's get started, right?
Let's do it.
So I'm gonna kick this off with probably my favorite employee influencer story of all time. So this is the TikTok of Tony Pellicino. He was an employee at Sherwin-Williams Paint, just like worked at his neighborhood paint store. And he started filming himself mixing paint for customers and putting the videos on TikTok. His account ended up going viral several years ago, and it reached millions of views in pretty short order. And he started to get feedback from kind of corporate that this wasn't allowed. So he took that kind of success, pitched it to the marketing team, this whole TikTok strategy. They didn't go for it. That got turned down. And then he ultimately wound up getting fired from Sherwin-Williams just for kind of using the branded paint. Even though he was like kind of purchasing some of this on his own, he did as much as he could to produce all of this, like sort of not on company time. But Sherwin-Williams just like didn't see this, like the value of this. They didn't kind of understand it. They were scared as a kind of organization on embracing this concept of an employee influencer, and they ultimately fired him. Around the corner, he was picked up by another sort of like competing company called Florida Paints, who I like love this quote from the co-founder that ended up hiring Tony, and he just gets it, right? Like this founder understands that like this wasn't like a polished thing, but this is an employee that's clearly really passionate about paint and about paint mixing. And he's like doing all of these amazing creative things with color. And they completely recognized that this was an employee influencer, that this person was creating huge waves on TikTok. And there was something here that you should really celebrate and nurture and encourage. So it's a great success story. Tony went on to become CEO of his own paint company. He now has 2.3 million followers on TikTok. And I just looked last night because I was super curious. Sherwin-Williams is on TikTok now, and they only have about 56,000 viewers. So I'm sure they're kind of kicking themselves at this point that they didn't see this the first time it came around. But today we're going to kind of dive into more of this, make sure like you have a lot of practical ways to create different like Tonys and other employee influencers within your own organization. So we're really excited to dive into that. Some of the things that we'll cover, we will talk about some definitions about employee influencers, thought leaders, all that good stuff. Some keys to creating one. Hint, number one is a great social media policy, a really encouraging one, so that you don't wind up in a situation like Sherwin-Williams did there. We'll talk about launching a campaign with employee influencers, and then we'll also talk about a couple of channels you can use today to start kind of nurturing this. Before we dive into the content, we'll just run a quick poll. We want to know, do you have any kind of brand ambassador, employee influencer program today? We're really curious to see kind of where we're meeting everybody at today. So let us know if you currently have some kind of program in place.
The results are coming in. About 80% said not yet. 11% yes, and 11% said we're looking to revamp ours. So the majority of people here today don't have one in place yet.
All right. Well, we'll have lots of tips for you. And then if you have kind of your own experiences, be sure to share those as we go. And we will be covering internal and external today. So let's keep going along with it, right? All right. Let's make sure we are good. Okay. So, what is an employee influencer? This is going to be someone within your organization who can shape opinions for either internal or external audiences. So, they don't always have to be sort of public in the social media space, but they could also be really powerful internally as well. Essentially, they have a lot of pull. They can create content that helps highlight your product, your brands, your services, and it really comes down to just encouraging your team to be brand ambassadors. So if you don't have any brand ambassadors now, you don't have that program, don't worry. You can leverage a lot of the stuff you're already doing today. And I am sure you're going to be surprised by what you already have out there. I would bet that you have someone like Tony within your organization right now. So we've thrown around a handful of terms I know already. So we'll talk through a couple of definitions. You're going to hear about thought leaders today. You'll hear about employee influencers today. And then you'll also kind of hear about employee advocates. So that's a lot of terms. Here's how I like to think about those. A thought leader is going to be someone who, just like based on their expertise and their kind of like general like overview of the like general industry perspective, this person's going to have a lot of unique guidance, and they are really inspirational. They are really innovational. A good kind of like way to think about it is like when that person posts on LinkedIn or when that person stands in front of a company and talks, like your response is something like, oh my gosh, I've never thought of it that way. This is like a totally unique perspective. And you're really sort of like, okay, I'm listening. I'm sort of following where you're going with all of this. So it's someone who's really at like the kind of top of their industry or the top of their organization. An employee influencer is going to be someone within your organization that has a lot of pull. So this can be internal or external, but there's someone who can highlight and shape opinions really about your brand, your product, your services. Someone within that company that's a really like spotlighted person. They might not have that huge like social audience, but you know that they have a lot of influence within your organization or with customers or prospects. This could be someone internally, like a lot of times we see that this is someone who's really like sort of culturally dynamic. Maybe they're a great like public speaker. Maybe they're someone who's like running icebreakers at your company all hands or something like that. But it's someone where when that person speaks, other people are listening, right? And then an employee advocate is just going to be someone, any employee really, who is engaging in kind of public or internal promotion of the company. So they're just like engaged with internal and external content. It could be someone who's just posting, nice things on LinkedIn. It could be someone who's just sharing news in Slack or in Teams. But it's someone who's just like kind of in the spaces posting about your organization. A nice way to visualize this, or an easier way, would just be as a triangle. So this is kind of a good way to think about the quantities of these things too. So at the top, we look at thought leaders. This is going to be just a select few people who really embody the vision and the expertise of the company. You're not going to have 100 of these. You might just have a small handful. And then moving down, you get to that employee influencer level. They might be in various different departments across the organization. There's probably a couple within each department. Someone like, if you need to get that department on board, these are going to be your go-tos. And then you have employee advocates. So this will be like that biggest base of people. This is just like those people who are engaging with anyone who's posting about like your organization or engaging in like that internal content. The people who are like constantly commenting in like Slack and in Teams and all of that good stuff is definitely someone to look at there. From a kind of overview or like 10,000-foot view, I like to think of these things all as part of building a great brand ambassador program. So all of these terms can kind of fit under that umbrella, and calling it a brand ambassador program is something that's a little bit more subtle and more well received internally. I find it to be very funky to like go to Kelsey and say, hey, Kelsey, I would love for you to be an employee influencer. Please join me on this webinar. that feels just kind of like a little awkward, like you wouldn't go out and self-identify as an employee influencer. But a brand ambassador program is a really nice way to kind of avoid any of that like potential awkwardness. Same with thought leader, right? Like you don't want to go out in the world introducing yourself as a thought leader. But yeah, we can avoid that awkwardness and just kind of wrap this all up really nicely, launch internally as a brand ambassador program. And that's just a warm, friendly, much more practical way to kind of put all of these things in place. So we can go ahead and dive into this a little bit further, and we'll talk through those 3 keys that you really need to start building this brand ambassador program and creating your own employee influencers. I'll let Kelsey take it from here.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Quick screen check. Am I good? We see it here? Let's dive into this just a little bit further. So we recommend having 3 things in place when creating employee influencers. So the first one is an encouraging social media policy. So if we're going to actively encourage our employees to use social media to promote work-related content, then it's always a good idea to give them some guidelines and best practices so they feel confident in posting. We'll also want to look at a natural fit and format. We want to work with individuals on our team, whether it's the CEO or frontline employees, to figure out where their natural talents lie and use those talents to create great content for the company. And lastly, we want to create a strong, consistent feedback loop. So encouraging more of what's working and being really honest about what isn't. So regular check-ins, review the analytics on each post, and most importantly, celebrate the successes along the way. So we're going to dive into these just a little bit more. So your social media policy should feel positive and encouraging. We don't want employees to feel afraid to post on social media. In fact, your employees may not be sharing about the company, not because they don't want to, but because they're unsure of what they can and cannot share. And because we want to encourage employees to post and utilize social media to promote the company, it's always best to have a good, strong social media policy in place. We recommend including things like best practices, tips and tricks to ensure your employee posts are aligned with your company mission and its goals. And we actually have a social media policy template available for you. We'll send this in the follow-up email. You can also find it on our website at useworkshop.com/resources. If you're looking to create your own social media policy, though, here are a few things that we suggest including. I'm going to highlight a few of them here. So a definition of social media and what it means to your company, including all of the channels someone may be on: TikTok, Twitter, an online blog, even down to like an online bulletin board or a chat room. Guidelines for social media, so tone, frequency, length of post, engagement, like responding to comments. What to post and what not to post. So encouraging employees to post about their positive work experience. Maybe your company just got back from a really fun offsite and you have a bunch of pictures to share. Encourage that. Maybe a department or team just launched a project or they just finished up a really big project. Encourage those team members to share that. Or just encourage them to share professional insight or company updates. Social media monitoring, this is another one I wanted to point out. So reminding employees that the marketing and comms team, they do monitor the company mentions and employee profiles and that they'll reach out if there's any concerns. And then employee social media training. So consider providing quarterly training or really whatever cadence works for your company to review that policy, best practices, guidelines, and tips and tricks for your employees for engaging with customers, prospects, and just putting content out in general. So next, let's look at a natural fit and format. Not everyone is going to be comfortable or even want to post on their social media, and that's okay. You're not going to get 100% of your employee base to do this. So try a pilot. We always suggest selecting a small group of team members that you think would be really natural and make great influences for your company, and work with them to see where their natural talents are and come up with a strategy for how best to promote the company through those talents. For example, are they comfortable on video? Maybe they could post short clips to LinkedIn or create a YouTube tutorial. The TikTok video example we shared at the beginning, that was a great example of that. Are they an incredible designer? Instagram or Pinterest, Instagram or Pinterest are great avenues for this. Maybe your design team could create an account for the company or the design team themselves. And lastly, are they big on personality but short on time? We suggest encouraging these folks to maybe speak at a local upcoming event or be on a podcast. Lastly, create a feedback loop. So don't launch an employee influencer program and forget about it. Don't set it and forget it. Feedback should always be ongoing and consistent. So we'll dive into this a bit deeper here in a minute, but you want to make sure that you're monitoring the traffic and conversions. You can always ask your top influencers to share their post metrics with you. Again, I mentioned this before, but encourage more of what's working and then be honest about what isn't. So one way to encourage more of what's working is to highlight those top performing posts or those posts that you're like, I want to see more of that in your employee newsletters. So employees can feel empowered to post. Oh, they like that. That's what they want to see. It also helps create a sense of community within your company. People will just be encouraged to post more. And lastly, gather feedback from employee influencers by sending out just like quick pulse surveys. With a tool like Workshop, you can actually embed these directly into your email. So you can send these out to your employee influencers just to gather feedback of how's it going, what can we work on, different things like that. Let's talk a little bit about the risk of social media. So the reality is most of your employees they're already using social media, about 98%. And of this massive percentage, about 50% of them have posted about their job or employer before. So since we know employees are already using social media, we want to focus on how to empower those individuals to create posts that positively impact the company's mission and its goals. And a social media policy can definitely help with this. But sometimes leadership is nervous about the total freedom of expression that social media brings. So remember, your goal as a champion of brand ambassadors is to show leaders how impactful, empowering, and encouraging employee enthusiasm can be for the company. But what do you do if your leadership is super nervous? We have a few tips for you. So encourage your leadership team to post more often. After all, they're generally your first set of influencers. You can also try the hub and spoke model. It's a really easy lift just to have employees share the company content that's already on like the company's LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. After all, that's already approved content, and you can just encourage them to add their own flair, personality, comments to that. Again, address concerns directly. This can include security, privacy, time wasting, and more. Include all of these points in your social media policy so your leadership team knows that their concerns are being directly addressed. I mentioned this briefly, but show great examples of employees getting it right. Share those employee posts in, your Slack or your email so that you can know that this is what you're kind of looking for. And lastly, highlight that it's free press. So employee posts will always outperform the company posts. I promise, try it for yourself. They will always outperform. So remind your leadership team that it's in their best interest to let your employees post. So let's dive into how to launch a specific campaign with employee influencers. So the first step is to define your message. This is going to be what's the campaign, product, or feature that you're trying to push? Who's it for? How does it work? And what value does it create for your customers, prospects, and the organization as a whole? Step 2, you want to draft your personal post. So this will help fine-tune your messaging and kind of set the tone for everybody else. Create visuals, so use visuals that speak for themselves and focus on that aha moment. Step 4, find your influencers. So identify employees who have a large following among your target audience. Get them involved early, work with us on a strategy with them so they're ready to post and they're already bought into the idea and campaign. Step 5, develop a story. So create a summary of your messaging that will help employees tell a compelling story about your launch. This is essentially going to be the who, what, why, where, when of your campaign. Step 6, share examples. So provide 1 to 2 posts of copy for inspiration, but we always say Encourage them to use it as a guide and not word for word, because it's really fun to see everybody's own personality and flair in the copy themselves. Step 6, so give instructions. Tell stakeholders exactly what you need from them. Which posts are they engaging with? A direct ask to post goes a long way. A folder, we really like having a folder either, on your Google Drive or your intranet where they can find all of the assets that they're looking for in order to post. And then what call to action or link to share in the post itself or the comments. Set reminders. So the day before the launch, send a reminder with clear instructions. We've found that sending like a 15-minute calendar invite to make sure everyone engages at the ideal time. So if you have a product launch, set a calendar reminder. Everybody posts at the same time, and it can almost feel like this mini launch party on social media, because then everybody's on, everybody is engaging with everyone's posts, and it really does feel like this mini celebration. Launch. So as posts go live, update your guide with live links and let everyone know it's go time, and make sure you're engaging with those posts. And then step 10, measure results. So we're going to go through this a bit more in depth. So you want to make sure that you're monitoring traffic and conversions from your LinkedIn, your landing page, blog posts, etc. So you can do this by creating a UTM code for each employee who wants to participate in the program and track those individual links. We'll send a link to this URL builder in our follow-up email. One note here, just make sure to follow the instructions, because it will show in your analytics and you don't want to mess up your Google Analytics. These links also come out really long, so we suggest throwing those then into like a bit.ly or a rebrandly to get that short link. And you can also customize it to be your like company name or your brand. Ask your top influencers for their post metrics. I mentioned this before. These are largely vanity metrics, but it can help you see what's working and see just kind of the growth of individual social media accounts. And then check on website traffic from social media. You can easily see this in your Google Analytics just to see a general lift and increase in traffic from social media channels in general. And don't forget the qualitative feedback. It can be really impactful to highlight just meaningful comments or posts that just have great energy. We've mentioned this before in some of our other webinars, but having like a smile file or like a Slack channel that you can throw in just like good comments or high energy posts, so you can kind of keep that momentum up. So I wanted to share just kind of a quick example of a specific campaign that we were interested in getting a lot of internal buzz for. So we recently wrapped a bus in Omaha to raise local brand awareness. And we started out by announcing it at all hands, and there was this aha moment and cheers. Then we sent out an email internally and linked to a new Slack channel that we created called Bus Sightings. So in there, and it's a very popular channel. I love it because it's kind of like the Where's Waldo in Omaha. Everybody's looking for the bus. They'll take pictures, throw it in this Slack channel, and people get really excited. And then from there, employees can pull those pictures that are in the Slack channel and post it on their social media. And then as the company page, we'll then go in and interact with all those posts and then share it from our page as well. So that's just kind of an example of maybe one specific campaign. I'm going to throw it back over to Jamie, and she's going to talk about two channels that you can start using today to start your employee influencer program.
Unmute. Got it. All right. Yeah. So we're going to dive into a couple of channels and some really, really practical ideas on kind of how to start doing these things both internally and externally. I'm going to start with just highlighting again, as you all have probably seen, employee social media posts are going to perform so much better than the brand or the company account. This is just like common facts in marketing at this point. People want to hear from other people. So on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on any channel, no matter what, an employee post is going to perform better than the company account. And the other nice thing is that your employee networks are so much bigger than where the brand can go and reach anyway. So it's a really kind of compounding effect. So we really want to encourage that. In the days of just seeing like a company social media account like get big kind of numbered at this point. So the trends are really, really clear. We just want to engage with other people. There's no better place, like as far as like the employee advocacy concept, of course, than LinkedIn. That's like our go-to. It's a great place to test a lot of these ideas. It's a great place to find your employee influencers today. And there's a lot of native tools within LinkedIn that are set up for you to be able to do this and facilitate this even easier. So if you are an admin on your company's LinkedIn page, you can actually view trending content from employees. It's a super clean way to be able to see every mention of your company by employees. For the most part, I would say on LinkedIn, people, because they're posting publicly, they're okay with resharing. It's sort of like a kind of the permissions baked in a little bit. On other channels like Instagram and things like that, things tend to be a little bit more private. On LinkedIn, if you are an admin, you can also recommend curated content for employees to use and reshare with their network. So if you're that admin and you post, you can notify all of your employees that you have posted from the company page. So if there's an announcement you want them to see or an announcement that you want them to reshare, you're able to do that. And so when you recommend that content to employees on LinkedIn, it's only shown to employees that are associated with your company page. And that's just like a nice, clean way. I mean, like that to me is an internal comms tool, even though it's a public platform, right? If you're not an admin, you can still see trending kind of coworker content. So from the company's page, just click on the My Company tab at the top of your profile, and you can see all the trending content that's been associated with your kind of company and posted by members who are associated with the organization. I love this for internal and external use, again, because it's really cool to see like what content from employees is trending and what content from employees is like just interesting to them. Like, what are they sharing? Because then I'm going to take that back and see like, oh man, that post from Derek about the bus was like crazy on LinkedIn. So like clearly there's some kind of like excitement and engagement there. What can we do? We could have done the bus sightings thing as a follow-up on the other side, just based on that response. How to get employees to post more on LinkedIn. If you are interested in this, I know we've heard kind of some things in the chat about this already as well. If you do have a leadership team that's active on LinkedIn, it's a great way to highlight kind of to other employees, like what kind of content that you're looking for. So make sure you're kind of screenshotting those, like all of those tips that we've already shared. We do want to make sure we just have like that group of employees, even if there's just a handful that are just actively engaging in LinkedIn, they're kind of like setting the tone, they're showing instead of telling. So even at workshop when we first started, I mean, there were only, even when we were 10 employees, like 3 of us specifically, like made this a priority and we're really kind of encouraging each other to do it. Things like a employee only event or a big celebration, when you're having those in person, employees love taking photos of that. Like just encourage them to share it as needed. Like it's not a private space, you know, if it's like something that you're really excited about, make sure you have people. We always, for big events or even like just like internal celebrations, we almost always have someone who's a designated photographer, or we hire a photographer because everyone loves sharing those posts again and those photos on social media. Make sure you can highlight those employee posts anywhere you can, and then pull those really positive posts and keep resharing them, keep reinforcing that. Employee specific celebrations, like any kind of like new product launch or when the team hits a goal, they're just a really great place to, a great way to kind of get people to just post organically again. So when we relaunched our Happy Monday Club newsletter, I'm sure a lot of you are subscribers to that. When we relaunched with the new branding, we gave all of our employees brand new Happy Monday Club diner mugs. And all of them, like a huge portion of them, posted on social media just with the cute new mug, which wound up, we got a ton of requests from prospects, from customers, from future candidates, like of employees and all that stuff. All of those people were like messaging us trying to get this mug too. So it was just like a really fun and dynamic way to kind of generate excitement for this. Other topics just for employee generated content and to kind of keep spurring this on, keep encouraging this. You can encourage employees to share their industry insights and opinions, anything in their own sort of area of expertise. They don't have to be like, you don't have to be a thought leader in your specific space. Like if you have like a great designer, for example, they can be sharing their design expertise and like their designs that they're doing internally and all that good stuff. They don't have to be only sharing company content. Introducing new colleagues or open roles. I love encouraging the company to just get used to posting for like recruiting purposes. That's really great. Highlighting any good policies or perks around the office. Sharing great client stories. Love that. And then just any celebrations or product launches that you can think of, press mentions, awards, little things like that. Hashtags, I wanted to cover this one as well, especially on those platforms. I know I heard like that, you might have people posting on Instagram or Facebook or some of those other places about work, and you're not sure if you can use it because it's on their personal accounts. Hashtags are a great way to get that kind of built-in permission to share or reshare. So a lot of companies will generate or will create a sort of like work-specific hashtag that makes it really easy for them to pull employee generated content across a bunch of different platforms. So I've seen things like hashtag life at blank or I work at blank or some of these examples. So that's a great way to say like, hey, if like you are okay with us sharing it, use this hashtag. That way we know. And that's a very common practice. Another way to kind of build in like the thought leadership thing, if you're kind of chasing that or trying to build up a few of those within your organization, you can get these little, I'm sure you've seen these. I'm gonna tell you the truth behind the curtain here. I'm sure you've seen these little like top voices badges on LinkedIn. So you get these just by contributing to some of those collaborative articles on LinkedIn. You really, to be honest with you, you don't have to do a ton. Just a handful of them, and you can get kind of these little badges and be able to like really kind of build that up, especially for a handful of people within your company. So when you contribute to a certain amount of those community posts, you'll receive this like top voices badge, and that's kind of a nice way to cement that thought leadership piece. Another channel that we like to highlight for employee influencers is email. Like this will be almost entirely internal, but really excited to kind of talk more here. You can set up employees as internal influencers. Your CEO is a really great place to start. So you just create a dedicated email for them. It's a really great way to give someone a platform and a voice within the like actual organization. So we've had a blast developing email just as like an internal influencer channel. So if you have someone with like a great personality or they have a lot of expertise, like we've seen someone like the people who are running their DEI programs, like they have this like platform that they're able to like send out internal information from them. Or I've seen like the like IT director share their like little security tips. Or I think we had a trucking company that shared like they had like their like head of maintenance share their little like weekly maintenance tips, like, and they were like building up these like little employee influencers across the organization. So it's just super fun, a really unique opportunity to give someone a voice, and especially if they're in a position where they need to communicate a lot. Also, just as a note, your open rates will increase internally if you send that email from a person as opposed to a department. So if you're sending as the comms director and it's just your name, you will get a higher open rate than if you're sending from comms@yourcompany.com. So that's another just like kind of encouraging that like the people want to hear from people, right? Even internally. So the CEO, like we said, that's kind of your top like thought leader, influencer, great way to start. Make sure if you don't, we reiterate this, I think in almost every webinar, make sure you have a weekly or bi-weekly CEO email to the team. This is super important just to like get everybody on the same page. Our CEO does one every week called the Friday Focus. And it's just kind of like thoughts and what's top of mind for him. And what we're able to do on the other side of that as the comms and marketing team is take all of that email engagement, all of those analytics, and specifically share like how that's doing. So we're able to share, like, this is literally it. Uh, we're able to share like the open rates, the click-through rates, what departments are engaging with that email, what departments are not engaging with that email, all the way down to the employees. So what that does for you as like a comms director is to be able to sit with them and say like, listen, your January email like didn't do so well. Let's look into that. This is why. Like from a strategic perspective, this is why. And being able to do that with the CEO, I think we're all on the same page, right? You're able to prove the ROI of that really, really quickly and have those strategic communications conversations that we're always looking for. We also like to use email just for influencer program management, similar to looking at like your team's channel, similar to looking at what's going on LinkedIn. Email is another great place to just see like what content are my employees engaging with, like what's interesting to them, what like assets are they using. Slack's great, Teams are great for like day of coordination, like if you're launching something internally, it's good for that day. But if you're trying to like put together a suite of stuff, let's say around a new launch of a brand or of a product, that stuff is very hard to have in Slack and it usually, or Teams, and it usually doesn't last for more than a day. So being able to like package launches and things up in an email is really great. And you're able to see like, what are people engaging with? What are people using? And again, those analytics are huge. Like you want to have that reference point to be able to say like, here's the content that is making a difference. Here's what employees are interested in. Here's who employees want to hear from, right? You will find that people like you, different leaders will get different open rates. So if you don't have this kind of data in your tools, like you're just flying pretty blind, right? So this way you're able to see exactly who is engaging with what, at what times of day, what departments are paying attention, all of that good stuff. And it's really important that you have a tool that you're able to kind of get all of this from. You also want to make sure that you're highlighting employee generated content in emails. We talked about this already a handful of times. This is like my modern day employee spotlight, right? So rather than, you can highlight a specific employee and that is nice, but you can also highlight an employee that's sharing content and like their perspective and their view of things. So it's great in all hands or like all company newsletters. Again, from the people want to hear from people standpoint, employee photos are always going to do better than something with stock photography. If you do not believe me, please try it for yourself, but they want to see the people they work with every day, and that will do better, even if it's not a professional photo. Candids are great. Feel free to try that for yourself. And then this spotlight idea or being able to reshare these things, as Kelsey mentioned, this provides that feedback loop almost automatically and sets expectations for employees on like what kind of content you want to see or what kind of content like kind of gets reshared and highlighted. Again, on the kind of like comms and analytics and organizational side, if you do not have any kind of internal comms tool for operating these things, for getting these metrics, for being able to see clicks, open rates, what employees have and have not engaged with different kinds of content. And if you're looking for something that can push some of these things straight to the comms channels that you use the most, that means text, that means Slack, SharePoint, Teams, all of that good stuff, all of those integrations baked in. Definitely look at something like Workshop. We can specifically help with creating, sending, managing, measuring all of those emails, all of those internal comms. So if you have any questions about that, just reach out to Kelsey or myself and we'd be happy to tell you more. But it's really powerful, like even for me, like to be able to pull all of this and see like exactly what levers to pull and what new things to launch in which departments. I mean, it's been amazing to kind of build our internal comms up that way. And I will let Kelsey kind of wrap it up. We're going to share some key takeaways, and then I think we're going to have some nice time for questions. I know there's been a lot, so we're excited to dive into the Q&A too.
Yeah, so just kind of wrap everything up with a bow here. We want to just do a few key takeaways. So we mentioned this, try a pilot. If you're unsure kind of where to start, select 2 or 3 team members who would be great influencers. Work with them on where their natural talents lie. Are they great copywriters? Could they put out a LinkedIn post? Are they really good on video? Maybe they can hop on TikTok. This will also encourage other employees to post as well. Our second one, create an encouraging social media policy. This is our second takeaway. Regularly update it and provide social media training as well, so employees know the updates and the training. And then launch an individual campaign with influencers with assets, instructions, and reminders. So it may kind of be overwhelming to think of this employee advocacy program, but if you start with like a specific product or project that you're launching, and provide those assets, then you can kind of start small and build from there. And then Jamie just finished covering this, but the 2 channels we recommend starting with for your employee influencer program today are email and LinkedIn. You can always expand and grow your program, but those are the 2 that we would start with. So I think we are ready to jump over to some Q&A. I did see a Q&A, a question come through if we'll share the recording. Just a reminder, we will share the recording, the slides, all of the resources that we touched on today, and the chat in an email follow-up.
Okay, I've been gathering lots of amazing Q&A from the chat, from the Q&A itself. I don't think we're definitely not going to have time to get to everything, but I pulled out some greatest hits to toss to the team here. The first question is from Ron and Aaron and Natalie, and then a whole bunch of other people who really wanted to talk about this as well, is how to get, how to encourage employees who maybe are feeling burned out, or how do you make a sustained effort for them to share on social media? They're finding they can get it once, but how do you make it something that lasts over time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, within our, even like our content planning or sort of like editorial planning, I feel like you can identify some moments that you might encourage people to share more, like internal celebrations or just things that you want to announce internally. So you really don't want to go too long, like without communicating with employees, right? So I think like, regular scheduled editorial calendar, just keeping on top of that, you'll see a lot of engagement sort of naturally that way. And then again, I think the like constant, like, highlighting how employees are sharing on social media, that it's happening, that you're excited about it. Even internally, like I feel like there are like the bus sightings channel in Slack, for example, is ours. But if you have something like that's a brand new channel, right? But people are engaging with other content all over Slack more because they're just in Slack for all of these reasons, right? So we've given people other reasons to come back to the platform and engage with things. I know when you're talking about an intranet, for example, that's a great giving people like new and exciting reasons to go back there and check and see what people are kind of responding to is awesome. And then I mentioned as well, from an engagement standpoint, if you feel like you need to like retrain people to like engage with content, I do think there's like having a small group of people who are like, we're going to be first to respond in Teams, in on the internet. We're going to go out and add comments and feedback, just so it's not like it is like, when you're on social media or when you're on Teams and someone posts something and no one reacts and no one responds, it's hard to be the first one, right? So if you can remove that sort of barrier for people, it'll start happening more naturally.
Of that.
Yeah, I like that.
Let's see. Another question that we have is, Zane said that they're running into the hurdle of employees feeling like they need leadership approval to share internally, let alone externally. Do you have any tips for how to get leaders on board and how to kind of help move past that step of feeling like I need that approval all the time directly?
I think this goes, I think this goes back to the social media policy of like clearly laying out the steps and like what you're expecting and addressing those concerns. Then they won't be afraid to post, and leadership will, their concerns are addressed through that policy.
I think I'd chime in with a couple of things too there, which is one, the social media policy. I saw a couple of people in the chat like, I don't have one. It feels really daunting to make something.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a giant legal document. It really just needs to be some guidelines of broadly what's okay and what's not. And the second thing is that some of the things that Jamie said about like getting your leadership to kind of lead the way, also lead by example. So if you get some higher up folks and some of your like longer tenured folks to be posting, people will see what the kind of stuff they post and and be able to, you know, glean how they should do it too.
Yeah, and working with those leaders, I think Kelsey did a great job highlighting like the natural fit and format thing. So working with those leaders on something that works well, like some, you know, I think some CEOs are really great at sitting down and writing a really well worded email. I know that there were some questions in there. I'm like, who's writing that email? In this case, our CEO is writing his own emails. But I know that doesn't work for everyone. And there are instances where we've seen people, rather than a CEO letter, the CEO is doing a video every week and they're sending that out and they're able to see that engagement with it. That's totally great. I mean, it really is like whatever fit and format works best for them. It could be like internal podcasts is one that we've covered too. Like maybe they're just better in that format, but you don't always have to like force people to post on LinkedIn if that's not feeling super natural for them, or, you know, do those written emails or that kind of thing.
We had an interesting follow-up about the pilot program idea, which is, you know, finding a few key folks that are kind of doing it naturally and using them. Someone was asking about a good length of time to do that, or how to know when or if your pilot program was a success.
I think we've talked about this before, but setting your own benchmark, right? So see, you have the pilot program, you've got these couple of key influencers, see where you're at and the post and the engagement, and then run it. I mean, you can check it a week in from your program, and then check it a month in, and then you can go and see how it's grown over time.
Yeah, and you just want enough. Whenever I'm doing a pilot, I just want to set it up so I know at the end of the pilot time frame that I like gave it a good shot, you know? Like, so you don't want to have questions on the end like, did I not do enough? Did I do or did I do too little or anything like that? You just want to feel like, okay, here's the time frame, here's the amount of people. I want to do this ambassador program. I want to run it for 3 months. I'm going to select 5 people and I'm going to really work with them one-on-one to become these like influencer type people within our organization. And at the end of 3 months, if that didn't work, that's great. But I know I had 5 people in there. That was like a good kind of like selection across the company. I know I gave it enough time. Like I feel confident in these results. And I don't feel like I need to just like extend or redo the entire program. And like that time was sort of wasted.
Yeah, really nice. I had a number of folks who obviously are getting 50 minutes worth of information thrown at them, and they're a department of 1 or maybe 2, even in a really large organization who's sort of tasked with this. If you had to break it down into like the 1, 2, or 3 very key things to just try or where to start, like how would you do it for a really small group?
Yeah, I think she might have mentioned it, that we might have covered a lot of that on the key takeaways slide, but Kelsey, if you can, do you want to narrow down the 5 key takeaways?
Yeah. Yeah. If I was to, I would say try a pilot, right? Start with your 3. Yeah. Your social media policy, put that in place so you have guidelines. And then for like the 2 channels, I would start, if you're like a team of 1, you can kind of have an ear to the ground, peruse LinkedIn or social media, and just pull a couple employee posts and throw that in your employee newsletter and get that out to start kind of generating buzz. So I would do your pilot, your social media policy, and then share that internally, whether it's through email or, you know, your instant messaging platform or your intranet. Those are probably the three I would choose.
Sarah Kraft is in the chat, and I know she mentioned this to hosts and panelists, so I wanted to share it because I love this idea, and it made me think about the fact that we do headshots at every retreat. So she said she's currently doing a LinkedIn audit for VPs, officers, and directors, and it's been a really eye-opening experience. She just asked people to update their headshot, add their current job title to their LinkedIn profiles, and make sure those team members have the support and assets that they need. I love that. We do that with new hires. So we send like the banners and stuff for LinkedIn kind of packaged up. So we've got those. We do headshots at every retreat on like branded backgrounds. Those always, like, people just naturally want to update all of their social media profiles like with those photos. But yeah, that's a great like back to basics.
I love
just
that.
Like even before you start on the social media front, just like getting their profiles sort of set up for this is a really, really good call out. I liked that a lot.
I love that.
That's gonna help with the confidence too. There were a couple of questions and comments around like people being a little tentative to post or afraid or like not sure if it's okay. Giving them that, you have a headshot that's really great. You have the company graphics, you have the things like that's gonna go make an important step towards that. Like, I feel like I am empowered to post on behalf of the company.
Yep.
Also too, with like the branded, I was just gonna say with the branded like LinkedIn banner, we're given a couple, like 3 or 4. So then you still get to make a decision of what you want. It's not, here's the single brand LinkedIn cover photo to use. It's like you get a variety. And if you look at our team on LinkedIn, there's a couple different ones. So you're still kind of get to choose what you want.
Yeah, for sure.
Another theme I saw, and something that I feel like we have a great answer for, is Maggie was asking how to make internal social channels more active and how to start generating some of that stuff. And I think we talked about it a little bit, but what I wanted to say is like, don't feel like everything has to be really super serious or really important or really like a big meaningful part of a powerful initiative. Like, people like fun things. And so one way to get people to start engaging is to keep it light, make it silly. Like I said, we got really silly with the bus thing. A lot of this stuff is not serious, and that actually starts to generate content that has meaning and that you can use in more ways. So it's this kind of, don't be afraid to keep it light or feel like everything has to be a really big campaign.
Yeah, I think I saw something in the chat come through that said we need more silly content.
Yeah, some of our like best, as far as like if you're using a Teams or a Slack, like some of our best channels and conversations are like, we have one that's just icebreakers. People submit icebreaker questions and one drops in every day at 2 p.m. and people feel like it'll be like, what is your, I don't know, ideal like final meal or something like that. And they're just like silly kind of get to know you questions, but we've had like major cultural moments just from the responses.
Yeah, we have.
And yeah, we have like the pets channel. No one's mad at that. We all need it in the day. Some good puppy photos. What else? We've like shared music, movies, all that. Like those are all great. Those are all encouraged. And yeah, you don't need the same with email, same with Teams. Like, you won't have 100% of employees engaging in any one channel at any given time, and that's completely okay. You just want to kind of build things that are available for everyone. Today is National Pet Day. Well, how about that?
What?
There you go. Probably the last one, question-wise, there's been a theme running through of is email still the best channel? What about intranet? How do I what is the best way to get people to read all this stuff, especially with internal influencers, and to get this information out? Sort of, how do we manage the channels that we're reaching our employees at to make this impactful?
Yeah, I think the goal is, like we said, you want to reach 100% of your employees ultimately with multiple channels, but it won't all be with one channel. And I mean, email is predominantly, I think every time we run the survey, it's like 97% of internal comms teams are using and prioritizing email as a channel. So you just don't want to like miss the boat on that. And it's such a great way to like organize information. I lose things in Slack or Teams. Again, like those conversations don't last more than like a couple of hours, and then you can't ever find or reference anything ever again. And an intranet is good for like, I like using it as a hub, but as a regular place to like kind of check and receive updates, you always need that. So we find with every company that we work with, even if they have a really great custom built intranet, they wind up needing to send emails to bring traffic to the intranet. So you just need kind of those, like, we always say it's like 4 tools. SMS, if you have frontline employees, Workshop covers that too. But SMS, instant messaging like Slack or Teams, an intranet or some kind of hub where like that stuff can live for a really long time, and then an email platform.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. We certainly didn't cover everything, but I've loved seeing lots of folks in the chat answering each other's questions, becoming just a communicator forum. Thank you all for participating in that, making this part
great
fun.
Tips too from the chat.
Yeah,
like I took a lot of
incredible.
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We had so much fun. We will compile all of this, the chat, resources. We'll send it out in a follow-up email. And thank you so much for joining us today.
See you next time.
Yep. See you later. Bye.